Thoughts without content are empty, and intuitions without concepts are blind. Part 1. The Man. So, Immanuel Kant was this German idealist philosopher from the late 18th century who pioneered not only a bridge between rationalists and empiricists, but also created one of the best internally consistent and readily applicable systems of ethics ever devised. All I wish to do with this video, as with any of my videos, is give a brief overview of the topic and the man, to hopefully spark interest in researching these topics even further. On the list of the most confusing, complicated, and most difficult to read books ever written, Kant's Critique of Pure Reason is definitely in the top 3, making Shakespeare look like nursery rhymes. It is most certainly Kant's magnum opus, and is in my top 10 philosophy books ever written, but it is certainly not for anyone just starting philosophy. Through the system of metaphysics and ethics he outlines in the Critique of Pure Reason, he revolutionized the perspective through which all future philosophers viewed and thought about the world. Part 2. Metaphysics. Kant's metaphysics managed to end the seemingly endless debate between rationalists and empiricists, bridging the two together to form a cohesive model for how we navigate and make sense of the world. Rather than assume that our thoughts conform to the objects of the outside world, Kant started with the base assumption that the perceivable world conformed to our thought structure, and that shift ended the entire debate between the two camps. Things like time, space, motion, causation, logic are all pre-built into the very structure of how our brain processes the raw sensory data received by our senses, so thus all that we perceive is held accountable to such structures. When we see a ball moving, for example, rather than see the billions of atoms and empty space within them that make up that ball, which would be the thing in itself, we see a representation our mind can comprehend. Thus, our thoughts are limited by our senses, and our senses are limited by our thoughts. This simple intuition also brought reality back, since both rationalists like Descartes and empiricists like Hume were skeptical of its existence. Kant separated reality into the realm of perception and the realm of things in themselves, both of which constitute base reality as real. Part 3. Ethics. At the core of Kant's moral system, known as the categorical imperative, is the notion for each of us to act only on that maxim through which you can at the same time will that it should become a universal law. Basically, to hold ourselves to the same standards as we hold everyone else to, and for us to act in such a manner that we and the world would be okay if everyone acted in the same manner. Kant extends this format to its very extreme with the following thought experiment. Imagine you're sitting at home with your grandma, and you hear the doorbell ring. You open it to find an axe murderer from the town over. He doesn't want to kill you, though. He asks, in the most polite manner possible for an axe murderer, for the location of your grandma. What do? The normal answer is to lie. Say that, oh, she isn't there, she's next door, and save her life. But Kant would be critical of your judgment here, demanding truth at all costs. Because, if you lie, what other situations will you draw yourself an exception to the rule of always telling the truth? Kant demanded that we hold ourselves accountable to the same standard that we hold others to, at its very extreme, however extreme that may be, no matter what, and this system is known as the categorical imperative. Kant's categorical imperative counts inaction as a choice as well. In the most famous thought experiment in philosophy, he outlines how one can be guilty for non-action, as well as confronts any self-exceptions and nuances within our own moral systems. It is known as the trolley car problem. For the sake of the experiment, let's say you're walking up a street in downtown San Francisco, and you see, coming down at the top of the hill, is a streetcar whose brakes are out. You turn to look down the tracks and see a group of 5 people crossing the street, right where the trolley car will go. Next to you, you find the switch for the tracks, which would redirect the car onto another set of tracks, saving the 5 people, but kill one unlucky person that was previously completely safe. Do you pull the lever? If so, you're like 99.99% of people when asked this question. It's pretty straightforward. Merely quantifying the situation down eases the choice dramatically. If you decide not to act, however, Kant would hold you accountable for the deaths of the 5, for your inaction was an action that caused their demise. Now, what if instead of the lever, there was a person standing next to you, and you knew that if you grabbed this person and threw them in front of the trolley, the collision would disperse enough kinetic energy to stop the trolley car? Now, do you do it? Not so easy, is it? Why is that? Is it touching the victim with your hands directly that changes things? Quantitatively, as we demonstrated earlier, it is the right decision, and is the exact same situation morally and mathematically, 1 life for 5. Then why does it still feel wrong? And why do most people draw an exception in this situation and not push the man? According to the categorical imperative, the 2 moral dilemmas are identical. And if you feel guilty about pushing the bystander in the way, you should also feel just as guilty for pulling the lever in the first situation. Or the same vice versa, not drawing exceptions around yourself morally every time a new dilemma appears. The trolley car problem is really good at pointing out inconsistencies within our own moral systems, such as if the single person was your grandma, or yourself, or if the 5 people down the street are your family. Does that change the situation? None of these variables change the quantitative standard we held ourselves to at the beginning, yet somehow it feels as though our choice and guilt level would change dramatically with each iteration. This is exactly what Kant desired for us to avoid with a categorical imperative. The trolley car problem is still vital into modern day because, well, we need to have a clear, universal answer as more and more cars become autonomous. The ethics of self-driving cars demand that programmers create clear answers to all of these sticky situations. I highly recommend watching Philosophy Tube's video on the ethics of self-driving cars. The link will be in the description. Ali does a great job diving into the details of the dilemma. Part 4. The Sublime. The Sublime is hard to explain if you haven't experienced it. The best description I've found is an experience that is beyond description or depiction, however unhelpful that description is. We can draw comparisons to other events that also manifest the sublime, but never directly. And only if you've experienced one of these sublime situations can you understand what it is we're talking about, in which case it's redundant to try and compare it for you. The sublime describes the experience of where intense danger and tranquility collide in a whirlpool of excitement, fear, beauty, freedom, and helplessness before nature. For some examples, one of my friends, when I was talking to him about this topic, brought up his experience climbing Big Dome at Yosemite. My dad brought up his experience of getting lost in the middle of the Arizona desert, beneath the splendor of the Milky Way. I've experienced it as well, when I was at the bow of a boat in the Atlantic Ocean heading into a thunderstorm. the experience common to all of these small stories. That's what I've come to understand the Sublime as. If you feel you've experienced it based on these descriptions, feel free to share your experience down below so that those that haven't experienced it could come to a greater understanding of what the Sublime is. Conclusion. As you can see, there is a lot of philosophy to unpack with Immanuel Kant, which is why he is one of the most important philosophers of all time. Some problems he fixed, such as the divide between rationalism and empiricism. Other problems he started, like the trolley car problem, or defining the Sublime. But, overall, his wisdom is applicable today, as it was when it was first written down, 250 years ago. Or maybe, we are just thinking a bit too much about all of these problems, and multi-track drifting can be used to solve all of our problems. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like, as well as subscribe so you never miss another one of my videos in the future. If you feel like you want to help out the channel, make sure to share this video with friends, as well as leave a comment down below describing any Sublime experiences you've had in your life. See you in the next video.